When the grid goes down in the dead of winter, most preppers won't freeze because they lacked gear. They'll freeze because they misunderstood the physics of cold. This video reveals the science behind why even a well-stocked home can turn deadly fast, and what you must do now to stay warm when the heat truly dies. Number 1. You are a furnace in a cold universe. In a collapse scenario, the biggest misunderstanding most preppers have is about their own body. You are not simply someone feeling cold. You are, in physical terms, a furnace inside a giant cold box. Everything around you, your walls, floor, windows, ceiling, and the air itself, is colder than your body. And because the laws of physics never pause, heat is constantly leaving your body and moving toward anything colder. That's how the universe works, and nothing you buy on Amazon changes that. Your body runs at around 36-30 winters, 37 degrees, or 97-99 degrees, and it must stay in that narrow range for your brain, heart, and muscles to work properly. Even a few degrees of loss affects your thinking, coordination, and judgment. At rest, your body produces about 100 watts of heat, the same as a bright incandescent bulb. When you work, move, or exercise, your heat output can quadruple. But here's the critical part. Your body doesn't store heat like a battery. It must constantly generate it, and the environment must not steal it faster than you produce it. In a winter grid-down situation, the temperature inside a house often plummets faster than newcomers expect. Even if the outdoor temperature is only slightly below freezing, a house without central heating will equalize with the outdoors in hours to days. Concrete, drywall, tile, and windows all radiate cold inward. You might think your gear will handle this, especially if you own a sleeping bag with a promising temperature rating. But this mindset focuses only on comfort in the moment, not on the long-term thermodynamic balance. Many preppers feel warm at the start of the night, then colder and colder as hours pass, without realizing that their heat loss has been exceeding heat production the entire time. Warmth at the beginning isn't proof your system is working. It's just the first phase of the heat drain. Because most preppers don't understand this, they misjudge their environment, misinterpret their gear, and miscalculate their energy balance. The physics is unforgiving. If you don't manage where your heat goes, your gear becomes nothing more than a timer counting down how long until your stored energy drops too low to generate enough warmth. Understanding this is step 1 in avoiding the collapse cold trap. Number 2, the 4 paths your heat escapes. To understand why preppers freeze, you must first understand the mechanisms of heat loss. These are not opinions. They're the 4 ways all heat moves, and they apply equally to your body, your sleeping bag, your home, and your shelter. Conduction is heat loss through direct contact. When you sit or lie on a cold floor, your warmth flows into that surface. Because floors and the ground have enormous thermal mass, compared to your body, they barely warm up at all. Meanwhile, you cool rapidly. This is why sitting on a cold stone or sleeping on a bare floor feels brutal. It's not imagination, it's physics. Convection is moving air, stealing your warmth. Warm air rises off your skin, and if it's replaced by colder air, you lose heat over and over again. Drafts around windows, gaps in door frames, airflow inside large rooms, and even poorly fitted clothing all accelerate convection. Still air is insulation. Moving air is the enemy. Radiation is your invisible infrared heat escaping into your surroundings. You radiate heat toward anything colder. The walls, windows, furniture, and especially the sky if your shelter materials are thin. Radiant heat loss doesn't require airflow or contact. It happens even when the air feels calm. This is why a cold room with no wind can still feel draining. Evaporation is moisture-driven heat loss. When sweat or damp clothing evaporates, it absorbs enormous energy from your body. This is great in summer, but dangerous in winter. A wet shirt, wet socks, or a slightly damp base layer can quietly pull heat from your core for hours. Many preppers underestimate evaporation because they don't feel wet, but physics doesn't care. Moisture equals heat loss. Together, these 4 processes dictate everything about winter survival. What you sit on, what you sleep on, how you block drafts, how you manage moisture, what clothing you choose, and how you build your sleeping system. All of it comes back to controlling these 4 paths. Prepping guides often focus on gear lists, but real emergency preparedness relies on mastering these mechanisms. When you understand conduction, convection, radiation, and evaporation, you can diagnose why you're getting cold, fix it with the tools you have, and prevent simple mistakes from snowballing into real danger. Number 3. Why sleeping bag ratings mislead preppers. One of the most common and dangerous misunderstandings in prepping is believing temperature ratings on sleeping bags. Beginner preppers often assume a 20-degree bag means they will be warm and comfortable at 20 degrees Celsius. But in reality, most ratings represent survival limits under controlled lab conditions, not comfort in real life. Manufacturers test sleeping bags using mannequins wearing full base layers, lying on high-quality insulated pads, inside draft-free environments. They assume the user is dry, fed, hydrated, starting warm, and not already chilled. In a collapse scenario, almost none of these conditions exist. You may be tired from hauling water, hungry from rationing supplies, sweaty from working, or lying on a hard wood or concrete floor with air movement pulling heat away from you. A 20-degree bag on a cold living room floor might feel inadequate at temperatures well above freezing. A $300 down bag won't protect you if you're damp, hungry, or lying on compressed insulation. The bag's rating doesn't compensate for conduction, convection, or evaporation working against you. Prepping 101 should teach that warmth comes from a system, not a single tool. Your body, clothing layers, sleeping pad, shelter setup, humidity, and food intake all affect how warm you feel. If you trust a sleeping bag rating without testing it in real cold, you are relying on marketing instead of science. Many preppers freeze because they confuse gear ownership with gear understanding. Testing your sleep system before disaster strikes is not optional. It's essential. A winter blackout is the wrong time to discover that your bag works only when combined with proper ground insulation and draft control. True preparedness means knowing how your equipment behaves when conditions are uncomfortable, not ideal. Number 4. The ground. Conduction that defeats expensive gear. Most preppers focus on staying warm from above, blankets, jackets, sleeping bags. But conduction from below is the heat loss mechanism most likely to defeat your setup. Floors may not look threatening, yet they are responsible for a huge percentage of nighttime heat loss. When you lie down, your body compresses the insulation beneath you. The loft inside your sleeping bag, which works well on top, almost disappears underneath your weight. Once flattened, that insulation provides almost no thermal resistance. Your heat flows straight into the cold floor, which acts like a massive heat reservoir connected to the ground. Because the ground absorbs heat without noticeably warming, it continues draining heat from you for hours. This is why even high-end sleeping bags perform poorly without proper pads. Ground insulation is not optional, it's foundational. A simple foam pad with high R value, or even 2 inexpensive pads stacked together, drastically reduces conduction. In emergency situations, you can improvise insulation using cardboard, folded blankets, quilts, spare clothing, rugs, or even dry leaves sealed in bags. Anything that adds thickness and traps air under you slows heat loss. Family preparedness planning must emphasize, everyone needs insulation underneath, not just above. A house can be much colder than beginners expect, and conduction doesn't care if you're inside or outside. Sleeping bags on bare hardwood or tile turn into cold traps. Without under insulation, people lose heat so fast that even good gear feels broken. Urban prepping often ignores the floor because people assume inside equals safe. But physics doesn't care about walls. If your plan involves sleeping on the floor during a winter blackout, your system must prioritize ground insulation, or you'll burn through your metabolic energy just trying to stay warm. Mastering conduction control is one of the most valuable skills in winter prepping and one of the most overlooked. The preppers who understand this will rest, recover, and think clearly. The ones who ignore it will experience long, draining nights wondering why nothing they bought seems to work. Number 5. Air, drafts, and the myth of shelter equals warmth. One of the most persistent misconceptions in the prepping world is the idea that any shelter equals warmth. Many prepping videos show people setting up tents, tarps, or indoor bivvy spaces, as if simply adding fabric around themselves automatically raises the temperature. But the truth is far less comforting. A shelter only helps if it controls convection, the movement of air. Without that, even the best-looking setup will leak heat faster than your body can produce it. Air is one of the best insulators when it's still, and one of the worst when it's moving. When warm air near your body rises and cold air replaces it, you lose heat through a cycle you can't see. That cycle continues non-stop unless you interrupt it. If there's a gap under a door, a crack in a window frame, or even a small opening near the floor, cold air will slip inside like invisible water, pooling along the ground and slowly pushing warm air upward and out of the space. In a winter grid-down collapse, this becomes a serious issue, because you aren't heating the room anymore. You are the heater, and your heat is constantly being carried away. Real home preparedness means shrinking your environment. Instead of trying to keep the whole house at a survivable temperature, choose one small room with the fewest windows and the least exposed wall area. Block every draft with towels, rolled up clothes, trash bags, or duct-taped plastic sheeting. Even cheap materials work if they prevent airflow. Once that room is sealed, you still shouldn't rely on it alone. Building a smaller sleeping zone inside, a tent, a blanket fort, or even a simple plastic bubble, drastically reduces the amount of air your body needs to warm. The same physics applies to clothing. Most prepper mistakes come from ignoring the outer layer. Even with perfect insulation underneath, if cold air can enter at your cuffs, neck, waist, or ankles, the convection process removes heat faster than your inner layers can trap it. A proper wind-blocking shell is one of the most valuable pieces of cold weather gear a prepper can own. It doesn't need to be thick or expensive. It just needs to stop moving air. Without it, your warm mid-layers behave like open windows. Prepping and emergency preparedness should teach that shelter equals wind control, not guaranteed warmth. A shelter that leaks air is just a fabric box. A shelter that stops convection becomes part of your heating system, conserving the limited energy your body can supply. When preppers say smaller is warmer, they're speaking in thermodynamic terms. Reducing air volume and eliminating drafts increases the efficiency of your body's heat output. In a collapse, where every calorie matters, that efficiency can be the difference between coping and struggling through every single night. Number 6. Radiation and the power of reflective barriers. Most people understand conduction and convection because they can feel cold floors, cold air, or drafts. But radiant heat loss is sneaky. It doesn't feel like wind, and it doesn't require contact. It's simply energy leaving your warm body and transferring to anything colder around you. Walls, windows, ceilings, furniture, and even the sky above you if your shelter is thin or uninsulated. This is why standing next to a window on a cold night feels uncomfortable even when there is no draft. Your body is radiating heat toward that cold glass faster than it can be replaced. In a collapse scenario, with no central heating to counteract this effect, radiant heat loss becomes a significant part of the battle. The good news is that radiation is the easiest heat loss pathway to control. Reflective barriers, such as Mylar emergency blankets, foil-faced insulation, reflective foam pads, or even kitchen aluminum foil, act like mirrors for infrared energy. When placed correctly, they bounce your warmth back toward you instead of letting it disappear into cold surfaces. These materials are often dismissed by beginner preppers because they feel flimsy, noisy, or not warm. But reflective barriers don't need thickness to work. Their job is to reflect heat, not store it. A single Mylar sheet inside your improvised sleeping zone can significantly reduce the amount of infrared heat you lose overnight. Some highly effective applications include taping a reflective blanket to the wall behind your bed, placing one under your sleeping pad, lining the inside of a tent or blanket fort with reflective material, creating a reflective ceiling above your sleeping area. This transforms your micro-shelter into a radiant heat trap. It's especially powerful because your body produces a steady stream of infrared energy even when you're asleep. Many prepper stockpiles include emergency blankets, but most people never use them correctly. They're not meant to be draped loosely over you on the outside. They're most effective when placed inside your insulation system, facing your body, reflecting radiant heat before it even reaches your outer layers. In a grid-down winter, reflective barriers give you a huge advantage. They increase the effectiveness of your sleeping system without requiring more fuel, calories, or thick insulation. Preppers who understand radiant physics optimize their setups with almost no additional cost. Those who ignore it will wonder why their gear never feels as warm as they expected.